Hello. Welcome back. I know it's been a while. I've been sick for a little bit. I still have a bit of a cough, so hopefully that isn't too obnoxious. I'm sucking on a throat lozenge here, so hopefully none of that is too obnoxious. Today, what we're going to be doing is am I have a couple courses on TypeScript on lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning, same thing. Literally, they're the same courses. Um, and but the one that I have for TypeScript, one of the ones that I have for TypeScript, the kind of more advanced one, is getting very old, and so it's time to update it. And so I've been doing a bunch of research on basically what this course is going to be. And so rather than doing that in private, I figured that I would just kind of stream it and kind of talk about it, right? So um, today we're going to be working on the course. I'm going to be looking at this. Um, so this is my TOC. Just kind of we'll be working through this and figuring out basically what should be in the course. So this is kind of an addendum to, and I'm not trying to sell anything here. I'm just trying to show you, give you some context of what what I'm doing here. So we go to lynda.com. We go to I think it's learning TypeScript. Yeah. So this is, like I said, I have two courses. I've got this one. This is kind of the beginner course. So this already exists. This I released last year, so it's very recent, and it's a very good overview or introduction of TypeScript. So it has kind of the basics, kind of talks about types and everything. And so the idea behind this course that we're building, it's not going to be learning TypeScript. It's going to be advanced TypeScript, whatever. It's going to go into a little bit deeper stuff. So the idea of learning TypeScript is that you basically figure out what TypeScript is and the very, very basics of how to use it. Now, once you get past that, though, there's a lot more, right? So this course is really going to be more like day-to-day usage, and so that's where I'm trying to figure out what belongs in there. So at a high level, uh, I really want to be very practical, very hands-on, right? Like when you go and use this in your applications, it's one thing to know about how to define a type in TypeScript. It's another thing to know about how to actually use them, or even a little bit more of the practical stuff of integrating TypeScript into your build, So when you're learning TypeScript, the language, that's one thing, but you can't ship TypeScript down to the browser. So what do you need to do, right? So at the very least, you need to transpile it. I want to talk about some of the different ways of doing that. Obviously, in the beginning, in the Learning TypeScript course, I talked about that, right? Just kind of the command line compiler. But those are things that you're not going to do when you're doing it professionally. When you're doing it in your real application, you're going to probably combine it with maybe Babel or something. This is old. This whole TOC that I'm showing here is actually rather old, and that's why I'm kind of going through and I'm figuring out what is actually still relevant and what's not. So like gulp, I'm not going to do gulp. Executing a TypeScript in a node-based application. This is like a command line node application, maybe, but let's move that down toward the end. Because I think the majority of folks who are going to be using TypeScript are going to be using it in the browser. They're going to be building Angular application, especially Angular. I mean, TypeScript is super huge with Angular. So honestly, probably that should be my number one audience. React, personally, I use it with React. I love it with React. I think it's pretty much a requirement with React. And then finally, what else? I mean, anything else, right? So I'm not going to go into like Vue or Svelte or anything like that. Honestly, I probably won't even go into React or anything specific. But Webpack and Babel with Webpack. I might even just reduce that down to Babel. So when I originally made this course, you needed to transpile it with TypeScript, the transpile of TypeScript, and then pass that into Babel. Since then, somewhere around late last year, I think, early last year, Babel has support for TypeScript. There's a plugin for TypeScript. Now, it doesn't do any of the type checking, but in terms of transpilation and integrating into your build, it's pretty much all you need, right? You set up Babel, you set up TypeScript with Babel, done. You're producing JavaScript that can get shipped down the browser. So what are some other things? I think one of the big cons, this is kind of an extension of that as well, cross-browser compatibility. So, TypeScript is a language, a lot of, and you're using it to access like DOM APIs or Node APIs or whatever. So you still need to worry about kind of compatibility, browser compatibility. So this talks about core JS and stuff. Again, I think all of this just kind of get bundles in with Babel, right? Like these are concerns that Babel does, that Babel takes care of. Do I need to talk about this? I'll merge it in with the previous chapter. Maybe if it continues to live, we'll see. Modules is kind of the big thing for me. I still could not tell you the difference between a common JS module, an AMD module, a UMD module. I'm aware of all these things. I kind of generally know what they are, but in terms of like actual low-down implementation and how TypeScript deals with them and everything, I don't know. And I mean, there's a reason for that. You don't need to know about the low-level stuff about that, right? Especially since the majority of the applications, at least the ones that I use, they give you UMD, AMD module. They give you all of the different types of modules in the npm package for the most part, anyway, right? So I've never had to worry about it. But when you're creating your own classes and you're creating your own script files, it is important to know about modules because each of those script files is a module, right? So I do want to talk about that, and I want to talk about it probably relatively early just because it has to deal with, it's kind of fundamental to so much that we use. I'm not so much worried about ordering right now. We'll reorder everything at the end, but these are the topics. So I very much encourage you to go ahead and type into the add any comments or anything that you have into the stream, anything you would like to see, especially as I go through this and I'm walking through and I'm looking at stuff. Any ideas, any TypeScript things that you'd like to learn about, please let me know. We can talk about it right here on the stream and research it on the stream, and then also I'll add it to the course. So if you want to be a factor in this course, you want to help make this course great, definitely hit me up and let me know what you'd like to see. Okay, so for lack of that, let's get back to this. What is and isn't, or what should and shouldn't be in this? So finally, way down here, whoops, we have decorators. So decorators are interesting. This TOC, by the way, is, or at least was before I started chopping it up, this is the TOC for my old course, TypeScript Essential Training. It's 4 hours and 19 minutes, released in 2016. So what we're looking at here is this, and this was created and released before that learning one that I just showed you. So this has everything from the basics all the way up to the kind of more advanced stuff, including decorators and everything. And so I wanted this to be the encyclopedia of TypeScript, right? So if you had any questions about TypeScript, any of the features in TypeScript, it was in this course. Because of that, it wasn't really approachable for beginners. That's why we created the learning one. But I do want to I want to keep that, but I also want to focus on things that are actually practical. So that's just my really long-winded way of saying that this Decorators chapter, it showed you, this Decorators, these videos, they show you how to build your own decorators, how to implement class decorators, property decorators. It's a really cool function. It's a really cool feature of TypeScript, but one that I just don't use in in my normal every day-to-day life, right? This is usually libraries will give you decorators to decorate your things. Still, even then, it's kind of few and far between, but like Angular relies on decorators a lot. Do you need to know how to create decorators in order to use Angular's decorators? Absolutely not, right? So I'm still very much on the fence with this. It is a very cool technique. It's a very cool feature of TypeScript. In fact, it's a very cool feature of ECMAScript, which leads me into another kind of conversation here, or another idea is that a lot of this stuff, and I've gone through and I've kind of chopped it down. A lot of the allure of TypeScript, especially when it first came out, is that it allowed you to take advantage of next generation ECMAScript stuff. In other words, it was a transpiler, right? You could do the advanced stuff. Hold on, my wife is texting me. You could use the advanced features, the new features of ECMAScript that just came out, ECMAScript 2016, 2020. You could use them, and then TypeScript would transpile it down to ES5 or whatever will run in the browser today. Now we really rely on Babel to do that. So now what we're going to be seeing, as I was talking about before, is a combination of TypeScript and Babel. And so when we're doing this course, it's very interesting to kind of compare when we're talking about what TypeScript offers. There are a lot of TypeScript features that are actually ECMAScript features. So I'm going to try and keep this course very much focused on the TypeScript features, but it's very difficult to talk about that without getting into ECMAScript features. Really, right now I'm just kind of talking out loud, just kind of babbling, actually. But I think what the net result is, bringing this back to back to decorators, ultimately, decorators are an ECMAScript feature. They're very far out. I don't even think they've been approved yet. But I think that means we're just going to cut this whole section because ultimately there's not a whole lot having to do with TypeScript here. And that's good because this section was painful when I originally coded it, coming up with examples for it, scripting it out and recording it. Frankly, it was painful for viewers to watch. There's not a lot of bad feedback, but not a lot of good feedback. A lot of kind of confused feedback. What is this? What does it do? So we can just cut that out, I think. Okay. Excuse my chewing. I'll just chew that real quick. Get rid of it. Okay. So now if we're cutting that out, what are we back to here? So if we're focusing on kind of the advanced features of TypeScript that we use on a day-to-day basis, this is it, right? So we need to know about modules. We need to know about generics. So get in deep with generics. And again, these are the old topics. We're gonna flesh this out a little bit more. Delete some, add some, whatever. So this chapter on generics really gets into the cool things with generics. In order to do generics right, I think we need to do advanced typing before that because you can use the advanced typing in your generics. So the coolest thing here, union types, type aliases. So when I'm talking about this, it's TypeScript utility types. So there's a couple of things here, a couple of concepts that we want to get into. We want to get into utility types. So there are a bunch of cool things. I think that's probably a section unto itself. So these are things like partial of t, record of t, etc. So these are cool. Let's look at union types. All right. Advanced types. So basically everything in here, right? Like this is pretty much the course, advanced types, right? So we've got modules, generics, and advanced types. That's pretty much the TypeScript course that I want to put out because a lot of these things I am using on a day-to-day basis. So let me bring up an example. Do I have it here? I'm not sure I actually have it in my... Let's see if I have it in this code base. So this is a project that I've been working on in the stream. I honestly don't know how up to date this project is. Looks like it's not so up to date. Let's see. We have the forms stuff. No, we don't really. No, I was looking to see if... oops, sorry. Let me change my font here. Font size, let's bump that up for my old eyes to 18. Is that good? Yeah, probably could be bigger, but that's fine. All right. Yeah, so I don't have it. I was going to show you an example of some advanced types. Maybe we'll do that in the next video. But there are some very cool and advanced things that I actually use at work. So, I mean, the basic, whenever I have a course, or when I'm writing a book, when I'm doing a learning course, I want to bring people on a journey. I want to tell a story, right? And so the story here is basically, now that you've learned the basics of TypeScript, sorry, my wife is texting me. Now that you've learned the basics of TypeScript, let's bring it to work and actually, leverage it to really, really leverage it. In other words, if you have, if you've just learned the basics of TypeScript and you've added primitive types to your objects like string, number, whatever, that's cool. That'll get you pretty far, right? Now you start adding things like interfaces, and those interfaces have a bunch of properties that are just primitive types, and so you're building out to complex objects and everything. And then you start putting in like generics and things like that. You very quickly start running up against walls of you're just not really expressing your types well enough. Like you start using the any keyword here and there, and any is basically just saying let's opt out of types, right? Don't help me anymore. And you generally do that because it is very difficult to express the type or the structure of the thing that you're working with, and so you just give up and you say any, which just completely opts out. So basically the story of this course or the journey is let's replace any. Let's get rid of any, right? Let's just use more and more types to give you more and more information and better feedback about your code. Meaning when you first start, you get very little. That's fine. At least you get more than nothing, right? When you first start using TypeScript, you've got some types, you get some help. Cool. The more types you add to your TypeScript application, the more it will help you. The more TypeScript will be able to help you. That's the story of this course. And so I think kind of in the beginning, we'll start with an application that has just very little typing, the stuff that we would use from the learning TypeScript course. Now, the reason I'm going to lynda.com is because this is actually what I have a subscription for, ironically, even though it's literally the same exact content library. But this is the thing that I have a subscription for, and I don't have a subscription to LinkedIn Learning, which is very odd, especially since I'm an author, a course author. Yeah, so there's learning TypeScript and TypeScript Essential Training. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so what do I want to look at today? So today, well, let's open up this application here. Let's see. So this is a React application. It has TypeScript all set up here, so I've got interfaces and everything, and I'm just using basic props. So this is, can I run it? Let's see. I don't even know if it'll run on here. I might have to boot up my other machine. That might be better. Oops, my cell phone's falling everywhere. All right, I got my other machine booted up. Let's see if that has it. Not connecting. There we go. Cool. This will probably have it. Let's see. Where's my mouse? Where did my mouse go? There it is. All right. Yeah, you can see what I was doing before. Yeah, this machine probably has it. Let's see. All right. So this is that same project that we were using. It's actually running. There we go. Okay. What I wanted to show earlier is I have a form. Here we go. All right, just off the top of our head here, just by glancing at this, I'm going to keep this chat open, but I'm going to, actually, I'll tuck it over here on the other window. Just at a glance, we can kind of see a bunch of things that I'm using in real life, a bunch of TypeScript, right? Implements, that's a TypeScript feature. That's a basic one. We already covered it in the initial course. Partial, that's a cool utility function. So we've already got utility helpers or utility types. Here's those decorators I was talking about, right? So these are, I didn't make them. They're not mine. I'm using them from the MobX library. But I use them. Do I need to talk about that? I don't know. I think if you go and look at the MobX site, it'll tell you how to use its decorators, right? It's simple. You just do that. Or, if it's a class decorator, you do that. Or if it's a function decorator, you put it on the function like this. It's very straightforward. And frankly, you don't really need to worry about what's happening under the covers. What else? Class. So class is an ECMAScript thing. It has nothing to do with TypeScript anymore. There are like public and private, which I'm not even really using. But again, I covered those in the initial course. The stuff that I really want to talk about here is this. So this is a super cool component. Now I'm going to geek out in React world a little bit here, just for a minute. In React world, you have props and you have controlled components, and basically it's a lot like HTML, right? You have an input field and you define the value on that field. Literally, you set the value property, and then whenever the user types something in that field, it triggers an onChange event, and you react to that event, you update the value, and then reapply that value to the property, right? So in other words, it's going to look like this. So if I were to do this by scratch, by scratch, let's say type equals text, value equals store.profile, store.profile.key, right? The property key is what I'm doing here. So what I'm doing is I'm making an input, a text field to edit the key, or this property, right? So that's the value. That will render the value into the text field. And now if I want to edit the value or respond to a change, I'll listen to the onChange event, and I'll wire up a handler. The handler is the event E, and then I can say e.target.value to get the new value, or the thing that the person typed in, right? And so now if I want to set a new value, I would take this, right? So that is, that's basic React. And now if I want to do this over and over again for each of these things, that's not supposed to be tagline, that's supposed to be biography. Oh, no, I already have biography down here. Okay. So these are synonymous, right? This is two ways to do the same exact thing. The manual way and this new component that I made. So this bound input component, rather than kind of spelling all of this out in a very imperative way, this bound input implements this, but it implements it by accepting the model, aka the class that you want to manipulate, right? And then the property. And that will make sure that these two things line up, right? So we've broken this down into the model and the property. Now here's the thing. Here I get full IntelliSense because TypeScript is awesome. I know the type of this profile, and when I use IntelliSense, I get all of these options, and I know what I can choose. Same thing over here, literally the same exact thing, right? Because it's an object. I have the full IntelliSense here, so I can set this model property to some object. What I really want here is on this property thing, I want this list, because it's a string. We're talking about React, right? It's a React prop. This is a string. When I do autocomplete on here, I don't want any word ever that I've ever used in my application. I want it to be limited to this same list. That's the experience that I'm looking for here, right? So right now here, if I hover over this, we can see property is a string. So why is it a string? Let's go to this bound input component. And we'll look at it. Okay, so now, see, I've already started to do some crazy stuff here. As a matter of fact, let's kill all of this crazy stuff. And we'll just rewrite it from scratch here. So model it's an object. Property is a string. And component, that's a separate thing that I was working on here. We'll just leave that. And what is that? That's a React element, I think. Or it's a component type. That's a React thing. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. Same thing here. I'll remove this. All right. So here's my component with just the basic React, right? So the model property here, I can kill this. I don't need it to be recompiling every time. So the model over here can be anything. It can be an object. Come on. Yep, object, right? And then property is string. So this is what I was talking about earlier. When we're talking about when you're just learning TypeScript and just using TypeScript, I'm using types, right? So I happen to be in React here, and this is kind of how React works, but it really doesn't matter that it's React. That's not really that relevant right now. The point is I'm using types, and I'm defining the properties. I'm strongly typing the properties of this component using interfaces and properties and types, right? And so this works great. Like I cannot go and put a number in here. If I put a number in here, it will be TypeScript will yell at me, and it'll say the type number is not assignable to type string. You can't put a string in there. So that's cool. I get some basic typing. But now I can put whatever I want in there. That's not going to work because that's not a property. That's not the name of a property on the object or the model that I'm pointing at, right? And so what I want is for this to give me an error. So let's try and make that happen. So first thing we do here is we make this a generic type. So we say of type T model. So that's anything, right? And this should yell at me because it's not typed. No? Is that cool? Okay. I don't think that's cool, but okay. Okay, so I didn't need to put that type in there. So that's interesting. That's cool. That surprises me. See, I'm a quote unquote TypeScript expert. I've been doing this for years. Yeah, there it is. It finally caught up. Yeah, we need a type argument. So that's fine. This is where things get a little bit complicated. Basically, everything we do on these type arguments up here, we also need to do here. So we need to do define the T model here and bound input props T model. That should work. I don't know why it's super slow. See, this is why I didn't want to use this computer because it's very slow. But that's fine. That should catch up. Okay, so we have T model. T model is anything, right? Bound input props of T model. So now we have strong typing on that T model, right? It's of type T, and TypeScript just figures out by the fact that I've passed in a profile object, that is the type of model or T model here, right? So now comes the magic part. How do we limit this string, the list of available strings, to only the keys or the properties available on T model? Well, first we introduce a new type, tprops. Same thing down here, tprops. Okay, so we pass that through, and so that works. We've got a couple of errors down here. We'll look at those in a minute. That's interesting, right? So now tprops is anything, though, right? We've defined a generic without any constraints. And a generic without any constraints can literally be any kind of type, which is why I've got a bad connection here. Let's see. Hold on one second. Let me see if I've got another network cable that I can jack into here. One second. And we're back. Okay. All right. Let me expand that again. Okay. So let me actually reconnect maybe to make sure. Make sure we're on that new connection. There we go. Cool. All right. So now it's yelling at me for a different reason. Now it's yelling at me that tprops cannot be used to index type T model. Why? Because props can be anything. So it could be a symbol, it can be an integer, it can be another class. And that's just simply not a well-defined property or value or indexer of T model. So this is where we have to limit it down a little bit, right? So the way we can do that is we can say it extends. So tprops extends key of T model. So I believe this is all we need to do. There we go. That is the magic that limits the values that tprops will accept to only the properties of T model. And now everything, these errors go away because all of a sudden if we say tprops can only be valid values, which are keys of T model, that means that they're, by default, they are keys of T model, so they're valid indexers, so all of these work. And that's where we go over here. This should start working now. Why is it not? So why is it not is because I actually just said the types of the keys of the model. So we actually need to say key of type of. So take the type of T model. In this case, it's the edit profile, edit speaker profile type, and then take the keys of that. Now this doesn't work. So let's see, maybe I type of key T model T model refers to a type but is being used as a value here. Okay, so let's say extends object. I don't think we need to do that. Extends all right, so we're getting closer. This is what I want to do. So T prop extends key of T model. And then all right. T props. There we go. Okay, so at some point, this should yell at me. No, that's not what we want. And we want a key of T model. Okay. So we were right here before, but now this is only going to give me all of the types. Yeah, so this is what we were saying. Unknown string number symbol, string number symbol. So ultimately what I want to get is this list narrowed down. Let me open this on my other screen and cheat over here. Let's see. One second. All right. Okay, so I was doing this at work. I have this. Okay, so this should, yeah, this should work. Why does this not work? That's exactly what it should be. So tprops extends. Okay, I think I have to copy everything that happens up here. And then that'll work. Let's see. Is that the only thing that I was missing? Yeah, so that's the obnoxious thing. Let's see, once TypeScript catches up. That's the obnoxious thing, is that we will now have to match whatever we do down here with the thing up here. But this should be it. So this, I mean, ultimately what I'm saying here is that limit the list of values of tprops. Hi. All right. My 3-year-old is in the room. I think that means I have a lunch date now. So I will pick this up later. We'll kick up the stream probably a little bit later today, and I will see you all later. Thank you for